Could Jackson Arnold be the worst quarterback to start in 2025 in the SEC? Yeah, he could be. I'm going to tell you why that's not necessarily a bad thing for Auburn and what that means for the rest of the SEC. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. This is your first time watching the #1 college football show. Welcome. Thank you for joining us here. We talk college football 365 days a year. So if you're into it, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and answer the comment below. Who do you think is probably the worst starting quarterback in the SEC? Now, 16 teams, right? And everybody's got their guy, but we're also seeing a lot of turnover at the top and at the bottom of the sport, right? The best 4 passers in last year's SEC, 3 of those guys are already gone, right? Carson Beck's at Miami. Quinn Ewers is going to the NFL draft. Jackson Dart's going to the NFL draft. Garrett Nussmeier returns. Probably number 1, number 2 on the list. But we're talking about the bottom of the SEC right now because I think that's where the discussion is. Not just because it's Jackson Arnold, but because I think that they're actually really talented 1 through 14, right? So as I'm doing the math here and I'm taking a look at what guys have done, there's a couple of things that stick out to me. And I'll probably revisit this in another segment about the best of the SEC. But right now, there's a world of difference between Jackson Arnold and Garrett Nussmeier. There's a world of difference between Jackson Arnold and Arch Manning in production and John Mateer in production. Even Nico Iamaleava, right? And as I keep going down the list, like, you got to get to Diego Pavia before you got to start thinking about maybe. But Diego Pavia had one of the best turnaround seasons in SEC history just last year and led Vanderbilt to knocking off the #1 team in the country in Alabama, led by Jalen Milroe, who at the time were the defending SEC champions, had beaten #1 Georgia, and had made the college football playoff. That kind of disqualifies him from this conversation on merit, right? Taylon Green might get in there, but that was a guy that passed for 3,100 yards and rushed for another 600. He was pretty damn good at Arkansas. And, oh, by the way, helped lead Arkansas to beat Tennessee. Now, Malachi Singleton had to finish that thing off because Taylon Green got hurt, but he played really well against a defense that had Tim Banks calling it. Tim Banks was a Broyles Award finalist. Like, that matters. That's important. And then I keep going down. I get to guys like Ty Simpson, right? Who last time we saw him play did not look very good in relief of Jalen Milroe. They had to go back to Jalen Milroe, who ends up putting together the kind of season that gets Alabama to the SEC championship and to the college football playoff. But Ty Simpson is the leader in the clubhouse at Alabama because Keelan Russell, they might want to give a year, and Austin Mack might actually take that job from him as he came over with Kalen DeBoer, and now he's reunited with Ryan Grubb as his offensive coordinator. But Alabama and Auburn are similar. They don't have a shallow quarterback room. They just don't have a proven quarterback room. And then I get into guys like Michael Van Buren, but Michael Van Buren showed enough to let everybody know he's got enough juice to go spin the ball. Like, he probably should have been playing ahead of Blake Shapen. He just wasn't. And then we get to Bo Pribula, who left Penn State to be at Missouri. We'll see if he wins the job, and I think he will. But that's a guy that, again, we just haven't seen enough throwing the football because he's been running it so much. And if you're going to turn him into something like what Lenore Sellers is at South Carolina, Jalen Milroe Light, maybe that works for you. And then I get to Kentucky and Auburn. Okay, so I'm looking at this thing. Gunnar Stockton being somewhere in the middle, maybe toward the top. But I'm looking at this thing, and I'm going, Austin Simmons has shown me enough, right, at Ole Miss, especially on that drive against Georgia. He can spin it. He can sling it. I like what I see from him in that Michael Van Buren category. He won't be the thing that holds them back. Zach Calzada was a starting quarterback at A&M who beat Alabama with Jimbo Fisher as the head coach and beat Nick Saban before he ended up going to the transfer portal, coming out, and then going into FCS and coming out. I think he was at Incarnate Word last year. And now he's at Kentucky, where he's going to probably replace Brock Vandagriff, who did not have anything like the career that I thought he would have, and certainly had a terrible season at Kentucky and retired from playing football after this. I think he's probably ended up being a pretty damn good head coach if that's what he wants to do, go into coaching. And then I get to Auburn's quarterback room, and I start asking myself these questions, like, What is it about Jackson Arnold that is great? Well, it's obvious. Dual threat, talent, it's there. He's got an arm. He can move. He's one of the faster guys that you got at the quarterback position. He and John Mateer have a lot in common. One of these guys was ready for the challenge at Washington State, and one of these guys was not at Oklahoma. And while Arnold didn't throw a lot of interceptions, I think he threw just 3. He also didn't throw for a lot of yards, 1,421 yards, and he got the hook in what I think was the most important game of the season for Oklahoma against Tennessee. You win that game, perhaps you carry a little bit of momentum going in against Texas and or Auburn, and something else might happen. He does beat Alabama, right? And that is the thing that you can say, right? He beat an Alabama team that beat Georgia, an Alabama team that lost to Vanderbilt and down the line, an Alabama team that we thought was going to make the playoff until they took that loss to Oklahoma with Jackson Arnold starting quarterback. His best game. Probably the thing that sold Hugh Freeze on going to get him. But it's not a shallow room over there. It's a deeper room than people give it credit for. Now, knock on Jackson Arnold is that he took 34 sacks. Offensive line was terrible at Oklahoma last year. And I've been the first person to say it was a revolving door. You didn't really have the steady 5, and the 5 that you had weren't your best 5. However, more often than not, he's holding the ball for too long. And when he takes off the run, he's putting it on the floor. And you can't have that. You can't have a guy that was also throwing the ball away or putting the ball on the floor on first down, turning the ball over. Can't have that. And then he had to play with, not the guy that he'd grown close with, Seth Luttrell, who got fired October 20th. But behind him, you got Ashton Daniels, who's what I call a career guy. Whenever you see a story where they're referencing a get out of the transfer portal or what these rankings for these different players or might be going into 2025, and they say he is thrown for a career, he has rushed for a career, he has caught a career receiving, that is so you can inflate the number. And Ashton Daniels' career numbers look like the kind of numbers that you would expect from a top-tier SEC quarterback in year 1, not over 2 years. Man also took 20 sacks in multiple years. Now, you could make fun of Stanford if you want, but coming out of Buford, I think that Ashton Daniels is just your Robbie Ashford guy. Robbie Ashford, who was at Auburn, who's now at Wake Forest. Ashton Daniels, who's at Auburn, going to be competing with, we think, Jackson Arnold for the starting job. But behind them, they got a pretty good quarterback in Deuce Knight. And there's enough people that breathe Auburn that believe that Deuce Knight's going to be the guy in 2025. That he did not flip his commitment from Notre Dame to go to Auburn to sit. Now, when you go get a guy like Jackson Arnold and you are paying him what he is reported to be getting paid, you're playing him to start. And the high school career is there. National Gatorade Player of the Year speaks for itself. But if he's the worst quarterback in the entire SEC, you got to feel good about what the competition is going to be like in that league in 2025. And I think as people are really hemming and hawing about who are the better quarterbacks and what the middle is going to be like, remember that Arnold can turn into the best quarterback in the entire SEC if things go his way. Now, I think that Hugh Freeze's offense is going to have to be a little less predictable. They throw it deep, and he can throw it deep. And if you give him an offensive line, you can almost do anything you want. But there's a lot here. There's a lot that you're going to have to rebuild because that dude took a beating for his ego, for his confidence, and for his play. If Hugh Freeze can unlock something in Jackson Arnold and turn him into the kind of player that we expect that he could be, yeah, Auburn could be pretty damn good with Eric Singleton catching passes, transfer from Georgia Tech was really good, Cam Coleman catching passes, and we're off and running, right? So I wanted to do this because as much as I really want Jackson Arnold to succeed, I do, it's going to be difficult. You're going to have to show a lot more. You're going to have to develop into the kind of 5-star prospect that we all think that you're capable of being.